First introduction to JavaScript, brand new stuff. Okay. Um, we put use strict at the top here because we're using more modern JavaScript. That's all you really need to know about that. Here's some key concepts that are going to be a little bit different, but are going to be really important. We want to output to the terminal. All right. So we're used to system.out.println. Here's what's different. JavaScript uses console.log instead of Java's system.out.println. So that's a difference. So we can do console.log, hello world. We always start with hello world. Console.log. We can also say, I'm learning JavaScript. Something you might notice, if my indentation is off, and if I forget things like semicolons, when I save this file, it will automatically fix the formatting and automatically put in semicolons. Okay. This is due to some of those recommended extensions that you installed. This makes it easier to avoid merge conflicts because every file, when we save it, will be formatted in a standard way with standard conventions. And so that's a new tool we're using in this unit. We could also use it with Java. It's just not something we chose to focus on earlier this semester. All right, so that's how we print stuff. Great. Variable declaration, assignment, and scope. There are some differences here, and I'm going to show you different ways that we declare variables. So I'm going to write a /**. That's like a Java doc comment, works in JavaScript as well. And here is how we declare variable declaration. We are going to use the keyword. There's some new keywords in JavaScript. Let. Let is the new keyword we're going to use. I'm going to make connections to Java whenever possible because obviously that's our shared experience. My connections are going to be mostly true, but they're not always exactly true, but I still think they're useful. So the let keyword is similar. So I'm using the word similar because it's not exactly the same, but it's similar to a local variable in Java. And it is block scoped. Okay, so we've talked about the scope of a variable. You declare a variable inside of curly brackets in a for loop. That variable doesn't exist outside of that for loop. You declare an instance variable in your class. That variable is accessible throughout the whole class. So it all depends upon where it's scoped. When we use let x, it is scoped within this block, which in this case is the whole file because it's not like it's inside of a for loop or something. So that's how we declare a variable. Let x. Easy. The next thing we want to do after we declare variables, and sometimes we do this at the same time, we want to assign a value to a variable. So variable assignment, this may be done after variable declaration, just like Java, or at the same time, just like Java. So I can say x equals 7. I'm assigning the value 7 to the variable x after I've declared it. So no, there's no type specified here, right? We're just saying let x. We're not saying like int x, string x, turtle x, right? It's just let x. That's it. And then we say x equals 7. Yeah, we can. So we can say like it's happy with this. We can change it after it's been declared, after we've assigned it. We don't usually do that because that's not necessarily helpful, but it can be done. So we can do console.log x, and we can see the value of x. We can reassign it to a new value, log it again. For the first part of this unit, the way we run our JavaScript code is we right click on the file in the File Explorer in VS Code, and we choose Run Code right here. We do not click the Run button up here. We'll talk about the difference between those a little bit later. But this is how we basically say, just run the JavaScript with its own JavaScript engine just for this one file. It'll pop up an output. We'll see all the console log stuff here. Hello world. I'm learning JavaScript 7:11. Oh, so this is just saying like when this JavaScript file finished running, it didn't the value that was returned was 0. That's just by default. And it took this long for the code to run. You have the special fast computer. No, I don't know. All right. Another concept we're familiar with from Java is some of our variables we want to be constants. We want them to be immutable. Um, we use the final keyword in Java for that. It's a little bit, constants in JavaScript are a little bit different. So if we want a constant, an immutable value, we use the keyword const. This is more similar to C than Java. I like it because I think the word constant makes a lot of sense as opposed to final. It is similar to the final keyword in Java. Um, it may be initialized at the same time as declaration or later. We could do it later even, which is cool. By convention, we use all uppercase letters for constants assigned to literals. Um, what I mean by constants assigned to literals is like a string with a hard-coded string or like the number 6 or pi or something like that. We use camel case. That's like how we normally do Java variables for constants assigned to expressions. So we use the word const for like a literal, like this. I could say const host name equals localhost. This is similar to Java, not too different. We can log that too. Excuse me. But we also use constants for here's a variable that I'm going to assign from an expression or from calling a function, but the value is never going to change once I assign it. And so we also use const for that, which is not something we do as often in Java. So that might be a little bit of a change for us. All right, one more new keyword that relates to variables, the var keyword. The var keyword is an older way of declaring variables. It is similar to local variables defined at the top of a method in Java, even if it's not done at the top of the function in JavaScript. Similar to that. It is rarely used in modern JavaScript. I'm telling you this because you're going to see it. And you're going to be like, what's up with this? Var y equals 11, for example. So I just want you to be familiar with it. We will not be using it. And in fact, we'll turn on some other extensions when we get to the second half of this unit, which will actually generate a warning for this, saying this is like the old way of doing things. Um, I can do stuff like, I think, if I recall correctly, like I can reference y here, even though it's not declared to here. I mean, it doesn't have a value yet, but like that's okay. It's as if the scope of this is as if it's like defined at the top. Well, only from the perspective of like it's a variable, not like it doesn't assign it, to be clear. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of subtleties with variables in JavaScript. In general, we don't really care. Like we're not going to be getting into those types of complexities. We're going to try to keep our code pretty simple. All right, so I'm going to run this one more time, make sure it can still run. Great. Hello world, learning JavaScript, 711 localhost 7. This is great. So yesterday we focused on variable declarations, assignments, and scope. Today we're going to focus on primitive types. And again, I'm going to keep comparing and contrasting JavaScript to Java because I think that's the quickest way for you all to ramp up on terms of JavaScript. So the first primitive type we're going to explore is a number. Here's a good thing about JavaScript, I think. A number represents both integer and floating point values. There aren't like separate types. It's just a number. So think about it as, because it's similar to a double in Java. Okay. So you don't have to worry about int versus double. You don't have to worry about like floating point division, inner division, integer division. All that stuff goes away. We just have numbers. So if we say let a equals 7, and then we can also say a equals 3.14, that's fine. And if we do console.log, and I'm going to show you a new keyword today, it's called type of. So if we do console.log type of a, when I run this, it prints that a is of type number. So the type of keyword returns the type of the variable, right? And as a reminder from yesterday, in JavaScript, we don't declare variables with types because it's not a strongly typed language. But there still is the concepts of types. And so when we use the type of keyword, it will return the type of that variable. So a is of type number. So I think numbers are more straightforward in JavaScript. That's great. All right, string. Oh yeah, sorry. Type of isn't a function, it's a keyword. So it's not like we're calling a function that returns something. It's more like actually technically, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I would classify it as an operator. I could be wrong. We should probably Google that, but all right, next primitive type. Here's a big difference from Java. String. String is a primitive type in JavaScript. Okay, in Java, it's not, right? It's a class. But in JavaScript, it's a primitive type. String literals are enclosed in single or double quotes, either one. And here's something that's cool. Backticks enable what are called template strings. Um, you may be familiar with those from Python, but if not, like I will show you an example in just a moment. Um, even though it's a primitive type, it is still very, very similar to Java's string class. Okay. So let's see an example. Remember, like JavaScript isn't strongly typed. So while a was a number, we can now assign it to the string hello. So this is important. Notice that we can dynamically, which means like as the code is running, change the type of a variable. Okay, we can't do that in Java. That wouldn't compile. So now if we do console.log type of A and we run this, we can see that A now is a string. Okay, so the type of the variable A has changed to a string. All right, let's see what this template string thing is about. And it's a way that we can embed expressions in a string, which is really, really convenient. So we can say let B equals, We use the backtick symbol, which is above the tab key, upper left of your keyboard. And then an expression, when we embed an expression, it starts with a dollar sign, and then it's got a pair of curly brackets. Everything inside of the curly brackets is evaluated as an expression, which could be as simple as a variable or as complicated as a function call. The value that is returned or resolved from that is then what becomes part of the string. So we could do, for example, like 3 plus 4 inside of the curly brackets. Yeah, backtick dollar sign curly bracket. So this is called expression embedding, and it starts with the dollar sign curly bracket and ends with another curly bracket. And then we could do console.log b. And when you run this, we should see it. The string should be evaluates 3 plus 4 to be 7. So it should say 7 world. It does. That's great. Cool. It's really convenient to embed expressions inside of strings when we're writing web apps. So you'll see that frequently. You would never have to do this, right? You could always create another variable, assign the result of some expression to that variable, use string concatenation, all that stuff still works. This is just more concise and convenient. And I think we'll see lots of things in JavaScript emphasize being concise and convenient more so than Java. We wouldn't use let twice because we still only declare variables once. So if we put a let here, we'll say like we can't redeclare a black scoped variable, right? So we've already declared it. We don't have to declare it with a type, but we still declare it. We still have to use let or const. Great question. All right. One more normal primitive type is a Boolean. This is similar to Java's Boolean type. So we could say A equals true, console.log type of A. And when we run this, sure enough, A is now of type Boolean. There are two other primitive types that are kind of weird. I'm going to be honest with you. But you're going to run into them. So I'm going to do my best to explain what they're used for and how they're different. The next primitive type we're going to focus on is null. Okay. Null is in JavaScript, null is a primitive type with only one value, and that one value is null. Okay, so null is both a type and a value for that type. That's kind of confusing. We use it in JavaScript to represent nothing or empty or unknown. That's when we would use null. Um, it is not like null in Java. So it's not like a reference to a non-existent object like in Java. Okay, so this is kind of a big difference. We're used to instance variables being initialized to null, or null mean there is no object referenced by this variable. That's not what null means in JavaScript. Think of nothing, empty, unknown. Like if we don't assign it, No, it would not be null. It's going to be what we're going to talk about next. It gets confusing. So hold that thought for like 30 seconds. Um, Null would be more like we're explicitly assigning the variable to a value of null because we want to capture that that value means that variable is like empty, which is different than if we haven't assigned a value to it. This is part of the complexity with JavaScript stuff. So we can say a equals null, and if we log it, actually this this gets worse. When we log the type of a, let's see what happens. Okay, so null is a primitive type with only one value, null. So we assign a to null, we log it, we run it, and it prints object. Okay, yeah. So this is because there's an old bug in JavaScript. So this returns object, as we just saw. That's odd. And this is due to an old bug in JavaScript. But they can't change the behavior of JavaScript because there's all this code out there that depends on the fact that the type of A is null. I'm sorry, that the type of A returns object and not null. And so we're stuck with this behavior. Okay. So again, I'm just sharing this with you because it's confusing and I don't want you, like later, if you for some reason are looking at the types of variables and it's supposed to be null and it returns object and you're like, something's broken. No, this is just JavaScript. It's okay. When would we use null? Um, like we had a variable and it's we're not ready to like assign it a value. We want to like make sure like there's nothing assigned to it. Um, that's when we would use it. We don't use it a lot. But to answer the other question, what if we have a variable and we have yet to assign a value to it? That's a different type. That type is called undefined. So undefined is different from null. Okay. Undefined is a primitive type with only one value, and that value is undefined. Undefined is the value of a variable that has not been explicitly assigned a value. So in some ways, this is similar, trying to make the connection to Java. This is similar to null being assigned to an instance variable in Java. So undefined in JavaScript is similar to null in Java in terms of instance variables. And I know this is complicated. Undefined shows up a lot more. Okay. So I will be upfront about that. We do run into undefined a lot more. So if I declare a new variable C, let C, and then I log its value, and then I log its type, when I run this, we will see, sure enough, the value of C is undefined and the type of C is undefined. That works as we expect. That's kind of nice. Excellent. Yeah, what questions do you have at this point? There is a type called object, which will be the type of like a variable when we assign to it an object, which we're going to get to in our next file after we do some pure instruction questions. Yeah, but it's not a primitive type. Yeah. What other questions do you have at this point? Yeah. Can you assign undefined to a variable? Yeah, almost certain. Let's try it out though. Yep. Because it means different things. So undefined really means like we haven't yet assigned a value to the variable versus null meaning we have assigned a value to the variable and the value we're assigning is that this variable is like empty um, or nothing. Like, so there's a subtlety there, I guess. Yeah, like a lot of times we run into undefined when we're like serializing, deserializing objects or passing objects through like JSON type stuff. And we expect a property shows up as undefined because it wasn't defined in that JSON. That happens a lot. All right, let's look at conditionals and Boolean expressions. Um, there, I'm I'm focusing on the things that are different between JavaScript and Java, and not so much on the things that are similar. Okay, so all the stuff you know about Java, it's relatively safe to assume JavaScript works in a pretty similar fashion, except for those things that we're explicitly going over together. Okay, so we're just kind of building on top of your Java experience, um, and just focusing on the differences. So JavaScript does type coercion just in a way that's a little bit different than Java. So all values have an implicit Boolean value due to JavaScript's type coercion. Okay, so this is a little bit different than what we're used to with Java. So for example, I could say if one and hello. Okay, we could never write code like this in Java. Oh, you will notice that my curly brackets are now going to be in a slightly different style as we're doing JavaScript. This is due to like our auto formatter. If I do it like we usually do it in Java and then save it, it reformats it to this. Um, to provide a little bit of rationale, this formatting is more common in like professional contexts. Uh, it's a very intentional choice that in APCSA and in software engineering for most of the first semester, we do the brackets such that they align vertically because it shows that students who are learning Java find it easier to see and understand blocks with vertical alignment. I think you've all got blocks down, so we're gonna like do it this way now. So if you're wondering like why things look different. All right, so this is weird, right? But like the number one is true and the string hello are true. So one and hello are true. And if I run this code, sure enough, it's going to print one and hello are true. This expression evaluated to true. Rather than defining all the things that are true, I'm just going to give you an example of the things that are not true. So if zero, zero is not true, the empty string is not true, null is not true, and undefined is not true. Okay. So I'm just going to add a comment here because none of these are true. So this condition is going to evaluate to false. So zero, empty string, null, and undefined are not true. So in the else, we can print console.log, copy this, just so like the print messages make sense, are false. I'll just use the word false here. There you go. So zero, empty string, null, undefined, all evaluate to a Boolean false. Cool. I think that's relatively intuitive. Like, okay, I could see those things meaning false. That's not too bad. All right, let's talk about equality and inequality next. Variables of different types are converted to numbers for comparison. This can lead to some surprising behavior. It also usually it leads to like expected behavior. So if we say if the string 34 is equal to 34, That's true. So 34 is converted, the string 34 is converted to the number 34 and then compared to the number 34. I think intuitively we're okay with this. Here's what I think we're not intuitively okay with, and this can lead to some bugs if we're not careful. If 3 is not equal to true, 3 evaluated by itself is true. But if we do a comparison operator, here an inequality operator, what's going to happen here is true is converted to a number. What does true get converted to? It gets converted to 1 and then compared to 3. So 3 is true, and like 3 all by itself evaluates to a Boolean true, but this expression 3 not equal to true also evaluates to true because the true literal gets converted to the number 1 and is then compared to 3. I don't think anyone would expect this behavior, okay? But this is JavaScript, so. Yeah, isn't that weird? Yeah. If 3, that's it, that evaluates to true. If 3 equals true, the literal evaluates to false. So just watch out for stuff like this. Um, I think most of you have adopted like the shorthand in Java, where when you have an expression that evaluates to a Boolean, you don't then explicitly compare it to the literal true or false. We don't really do that anymore. We did like back in APCSA when we were first learning conditionals. So I don't think we're going to fall into this pitfall, but I just want to make sure like we're aware of it. All right, there's two new operators that we use a lot in JavaScript that don't that are different syntax than what we're accustomed to in Java. The first is the strict equality operator. Equality operator. It is a triple equal sign. The triple equal sign, the equality operator, does not perform type coercion. It returns false if the types are different. It is probably most similar to Java's equality operator, the double equal sign. It is recommended to use this operator instead of the equality operator. The equality operator, again, is the double equal sign. Why? Well, because stuff like this is really weird, right? So use the triple equality operator instead. So here's an example of the triple equality operator. If the string 34 is strictly equal to the number 34, these are not equal because they are different types. Okay, so they're not strictly equal. Different types. So we could have an else that says console.log. The string 34 is not strictly equal to 34 because they are different types. Isn't that cool that when we save it, it automatically reformats it so we can see it all on our screen and does all the indentation for us? This is great. All right, one more important recommendation, and this relates to undefined and null. So here's my recommendation, not my recommendation, I didn't come up with this. This is someone who knows JavaScript much better than me. Recommendation regarding null and undefined. Only use the strict equality and inequality, the inequality operators. Okay, that's the triple equal sign and the bang equal sign. Those are the strict equality and strict inequality operators. Comparison, comparison, and the equality operator will most likely return unexpected results. In fact, I think I have the extension enabled right now, but if not, we certainly will when we get to the second half of this unit. You will get warnings if you don't follow this recommendation. Okay. Because it's so easy to end up with unexpected behavior. So the type of code we will write is like A is strictly equal to null, console.log, A is null, and something like if C is strictly equal to undefined, console.log, C is undefined. Okay. So we're going to do this just to avoid issues, unexpected issues.